Hey, good morning, everyone. Thanks for being here. And you made it, Denise. Thank God. I'm glad you're here today. Glad you were able to catch this live. So, I'm going to give a few announcements that I'll probably give for the next couple of streams just to make sure everyone knows where I'm at with some things and also to give a chance for some people to find us and jump in before we get started on our main topic today. So I want to talk about the direction of my channel, and I mentioned this last time, but I think it's worth saying again and again. Good morning, Alexandra. Nice to see you. Um, there's a lot of great content, Orthodox content online. A lot of it is geared towards debating, and these channels are needed. And it's great that they're there. They've obviously helped a lot of people. But there is also a lot of arguing that goes on, often without a lot of charity, unfortunately. And I think that there's a lot of people out there who are just tired of the constant arguing. And I look at I look at some of the people coming to the church now and they seem like they are spiritual refugees. They're just worn out. They're looking for a peaceful place that they can find peace in. And that's kind of what I want my channel to be. So there's a lot of hot topics out there. We will kind of rarely go over some of those. Um, I do have opinions about them, but we're not going to be talking about them here in general. In general, we're going to try to keep it upbeat and encouraging because life is hard for people. And there's enough places that you can find online if you want to argue about stuff. Uh, so that's where we are with this channel. I also want to draw your attention to my main page on YouTube. At the bottom, there is a playlist of spiritual talks. These are talks that I highly recommend from other people, mostly spiritual fathers and bishops, monks. And the great thing is that they are full of great teaching, but they are also full of the Orthodox ethos. And so it's not only what people say, but it's how they say it. And if you don't know anyone in your life who is spiritually advanced and you're just reading books, which is great to read books, but if you're only reading books and you don't have someone in your life like this, it can be difficult for you to get an idea for what it means or what it looks like to be spiritual. And so I think it's important for these talks, not only for their content, but for you to see what holy people act like. Act is maybe not the best word, but the way that they are in their being. They're very humble, they're very meek. They say the truth, but they say it with a lot of incrimination, not incriminating others. They always blame themselves for things, not in a unhealthy way, but in a spiritually healthy way. And so there's just so much that you can draw out of just watching them and the way they are. So again, that's at the bottom of my main channel. There's a playlist called Spiritual Talks. You'll see Father Savas Agiorites there, Metropolitan Jonah, Constantine Zalalis. If you're not watching Constantine Zalalis, you should be. He's one of the few great teachers in English that's available to us, and he has hundreds and hundreds of talks. So there's just a real wealth of information on there. Also, Father Zachariah Zachary would be the other English-speaking elder. Constantine's a wonderful man. He's a layman, but Father Zachariah is an actual elder and monk in a monastery. Okay, so good morning, everyone. Good morning, Mano. So we're going to start with we have two main topics today. First, I want to go over a mentor. And this came up in a discussion. Someone reached out to me and was just really giving some encouragement in the last couple of videos I made, where I shared quite a bit of personal stuff. And I think that resonated with some of you. And a lot of people reached out. And I want to say how much I appreciate that. Yeah, OBG, I'm aware of some of the things, but again, that's I'm happy to talk with you privately about that. But Metropolitan Jonah is an old friend. He is very beloved by our family, so I'm not going to have that discussion publicly here, but I'm happy to have it with you privately. So, so I think part of what resonates with my channel with people is that there's kind of a loneliness epidemic. There's a lot of people out there who don't have family. We've talked about many times. They don't have friends. Maybe they're new to the church and they just haven't yet found their place. And this loneliness epidemic is really hurting everyone. And so when you hear somebody just being honest about where they're at, being honest about the things that they go through, um, I think that resonates with people. And so I'm happy to interact with anyone who reaches out to me. And forgive me, I'm going to ignore the chats for a minute. I'm losing my train of thought. Um, I'm happy to respond and to help in any way I can, whether it's through videos or personal private correspondence. But you really need real people in your life, and the real people that you need in your life are friends, people that are maybe in the same spot as you, who you just get on with, right? But you also need mentors, and I look at a mentor as being a little bit different. There's someone who is usually a little ahead of you. And I'm not saying like spiritually necessarily, but maybe you're a young mom and you need an older mom to look up to and to get advice about the new stages of life that you're going through. I'm 47 and I still need this. I'm going into the empty nest years, right? And headed into menopause at some point. I don't know anything about these things. So it's really helpful for me to be around women who have weathered those storms. It can also be women that you wanna be like. So there's some older women that I really look up to. There's actually some younger women that I really look up to in this way and that I wish I was more like them in the way I handled myself and the way I think about things. And so, this is the important thing. You need both friends and mentors. The online world and those of us out here reaching out to all of you, we're doing all that we can, and we're happy to do it. It's a blessing for us. I can tell you that. Anyone who's doing it will tell you it's also a blessing for us. But for your sake, you need to find real people in your real everyday life and maybe start praying to God to help you with that because none of us are meant to go it alone. Even even an ascetic in the desert came from somewhere. They have a spiritual father. They have kind of a monastic base or something. They're not going this alone. We're meant to be in communion with each other. And so you really need this encouragement. And the less family you have, the less actual parents and siblings and cousins and everything, the more you need this. And I would just encourage you to do all you can to develop those relationships, both friendships, mentors, adopted grandparents, adopted children in a sense, right? You need to be surrounded by different people who love you in different ways. Hope that's making sense. It's Marilyn. Hi, good morning, Marilyn. She says it's really difficult to find a tribe, as they say, when you're deep in the trenches of motherhood. It absolutely is. And one of the things I've started to do, because I felt like I was neglecting some of my own friendships because life is really busy at home. And even though I only have one left, I'm kind of drowning in different projects that I do. And so I would make it a point to every week I call somebody. Every week I send somebody a text and I try to cycle through my friends. Most of my friends actually live pretty far away and I very, very rarely ever see them. So we can kind of build it into our daily routine, right? It's easy to pick up your smartphone and start playing a game when you need a few minutes to unwind or something, but um, it's really not going to give you what you need. What you need is to reach out to a real person and just they need it as much as you do. It's actually not just for you, it's for them too. And so reach out to your granny, whether that's real or adopted, young women, older women, whoever it is in your life, just today, after this stream, send them a message. Say, hey, I'm thinking about you. Hope you're doing well. Right. Okay. So I'll quickly say hi to everyone in the chat. So we've got Mano, Denise, OBG. Good morning, Rip. Nice to see you. I think that's everybody right now. I do have to ignore the chat a little bit. Sometimes I lose my train of thought and then it's just me up here sitting here saying all the time. So so I want to encourage all of you to do this today. It will make a difference in your life. If you don't have someone in your life, um, then start praying for someone. And even those of you that I know you say you're alone, you do have us. If you only have us, the online community, then reach out to one of us and say, "Hey, how you doing today?" And start building that, right? You really, really need that. You really need someone who you can call when things get rough or when things get really wonderful. And it doesn't take much to feel the love of someone else, just someone reaching out and checking in on you. Such a small thing, but our life has become so quick and so entertainment driven and so selfish that we forget to do these things. And then we wonder why we feel alone. Well, it's because we don't go to the house next door and knock on the door and say, "Hi, can I borrow this?" or "How are you doing?" or "Do you need help with something?" Right? Um, so OBG says, "I feel weaker and weaker. The attacks ahead of Mark and Mida moving here are big." Anytime you do some spiritual work, you should expect great spiritual struggle. These things go hand in hand. If you are taking on something, you have to increase your prayer, your faith. You have to, get your inner house in order, or you're going to stumble. And if you are stumbling, that's okay too. There's always repentance, but you have to get back up. But anytime you do something good, including reaching out to people, you might feel a little bit of an attack or some spiritual warfare going on, but you just keep doing it. The spiritual warfare is meant to, the other side is meant to make you give up. And so you have to do the opposite. You have to double down on your prayers, on your fasting, whatever you're doing, your almsgiving, your show of love for others, your lack of judgment for others, and um, you have to double down on the spiritual life. Okay, and so the main topic I wanted to talk about today was marriage, which I brought up in the kind of second super personal live stream. So there was the Thanksgiving stream. Hey, good morning, Mela. We're just getting into the main thing here. So on the Thanksgiving stream, I of course told my life story, and then on the one after that, I think it was last week, we talked about the two great difficult times that I went through in my life. Once when I was young, kind of stripping away my identity, and then the other one where we went through an incredible amount of difficult things out of our control, the death of parents, losing our house, moving across the country, living apart for a while. It was all this stress, right? And so one of the things we were dealing with towards the end of that was that our marriage went through a really difficult time. And I had shared that a lot of times when we get to about the 10 or 15-year mark, people go through a difficult time in their marriage. There seems to be some sort of readjustment period there. And I don't, I can only speak to my experience, but it can feel like all of a sudden, things are going well for those first few years. You have children, life is really busy, everything seems to be going well, and then all of a sudden, you realize, wait, we were like really on two separate pages here. We've drifted apart. There's some underlining issues that we've been sweeping under the rug, and all of a sudden, you can feel kind of blindsided. You can feel extremely alone, and it's hard to reach out to people because um, it's hard because you don't want to. This is extremely personal stuff, right? You don't want to lay your whole life out there for other people. It's you don't want to share, very personal things, right? And so you get compounded with this loneliness, right? So you're dealing with the issue, and now you often feel like you can't go and talk to anybody. So I really think we need to talk about this more, not in necessarily the details, but that you are going to struggle in your marriage. It does not mean that something is wrong with you. It just means you've been married for 15 years or whatever, and you need to kind of do a confession for your marriage in a sense. You need to clean it out. You need to, um, as you've grown closer and closer, as you've gotten closer over the years, um, different issues, right? Your different insecurities, your sins, all these things are starting to come out more and more. Resentments, all these things have to be dealt with. And I remember getting to a point with my husband that I was hurt and I was angry and I couldn't talk to anybody. Like I was really angry. I'm not usually a very angry person, but I think when you're going through emotions and really difficult, intense times like this, it's important to um, own your feelings. I don't like being angry. I don't like being an angry person, but I had to admit that, yeah, I am angry because if you don't kind of accept the emotion that you're feeling, you can't work through it. If you just deny that you're feeling it, it's not going to get you anywhere. It's not, you can't say, okay, I'm not this. I'm not angry. I'm fine. I'm fine. You're not fine. You are angry. And of course, you need to work through that. I don't think repentance is ignoring the feelings that you have. Hope that makes sense. You can tell me if this is making sense or not. So I had to realize how angry I was at my husband. And I had a choice. I could be angry. And my anger, by the way, was causing him to be driven further away. And it was not helping the problem to be solved. It was driving a bigger and bigger wedge. But I was angry and I wanted him to respond in a certain way, and he wasn't responding that way. And so I had a choice. I could keep doing what I was doing, being righteously angry, uh, and drive him farther away, or I could kind of step outside of myself and look at myself a little more unbiasedly and say, "Yeah, you are angry, but what do you want? Do you want to be right, or do you want your husband's salvation?" And what I realized is that my anger became a barrier for his salvation because he was already dealing with something. And if my anger is there, um, it's one more hurdle that he has to get over, one more thing he has to process, right? And yeah, I am angry, but I need to deal with that, right? And I can say that I'm angry. That's okay. But it can't become a barrier. Um, and once I realized that, yes, I'm angry, but my deeper concern is for his salvation. Then I was able to see him like I used to, right? He wasn't this person that was hurting me now. Now he was this person that I love, this person that takes care of me, this person who's been a wonderful father, a wonderful husband, right? And I could all of a sudden remember all the reasons why I loved him. But it was difficult to see in that moment when there's so much pain. And so I think you have to recognize the pain you're feeling, but you also have to make sure it doesn't become a barrier um, for your for looking at it in a spiritual way, right? We can let our emotions get the best of us. Um, is this making sense, guys? Hopefully it is. Sometimes it makes sense in my head, and I'm not sure it's making sense to all of you. But the main point I'm trying to make here is that you have to not ignore how you feel, but not let it um, take you, overtake you. Okay. Um, so I also wanted to bring up um, Saint Monica. If you don't know who Saint Monica is, um, Saint Monica is the mother of Saint Augustine. And I bring her up because she was one of the two subjects I was actually kind of given a mandate to talk about, and I haven't yet talked about Saint Monica. It's been on my list for months. So, Saint Monica was the mother of Saint Augustine of Hippo, the Blessed Augustine. So many of you know that um, maybe you know a lot about his latter life, but in the early years, um, his father was an idolater and a very cruel man. He had a couple of brothers and sisters, I believe, but Saint Monica was a Christian, and she always tried to raise her children as Christians as best she could. I don't believe the dad allowed them to be baptized. So Saint Augustine ends up becoming pretty wild. He leads a very hedonistic lifestyle. He actually has a child out of wedlock, and Saint Monica is devastated, and she is praying for him constantly. And at some point, he comes back to the church, but unfortunately, he goes to a heretical group. And so now she is even more distraught and she's praying for him even more. Eventually, he comes to the church and, of course, becomes a bishop and a great saint of the church. So, St. Monica is often talked about in terms of if you have wayward children, you want the tears of St. Monica. And she was friends with St. Ambrose of Milan as well. And I believe it was him, it might have been another bishop, but she was pouring her heart out to the bishop once about her son and how distraught she was over his lifestyle. And there's this beautiful quote that he says to her, which is, "The child of so many tears will not be lost." It's a really beautiful story. And I'll tell a more complete story another time. But what we often don't talk about with St. Monica is that her husband was very difficult to live with. Again, he was cruel. He excuse me, he never beat her. They make that clear in her life, but he would make fun of her and say nasty things about her Christian lifestyle, which was full of great almsgiving. And I believe also her mother or his mother, I don't quite remember, also were very cruel to her. And so we see St. Monica as this model of someone who, um, out of love for her husband, was patient. And she had every reason to be angry with him, right? The way he was treating her, it wasn't fair, it wasn't kind. She was actually given in marriage by her parents to this man because he was wealthy, even though he was an idolater. So her parents were Christian, so it's a little odd that they would make her marry this man, but they did, and she obediently followed them, allowed this to happen. She accepted it all as God's will. And in the end of his life, I think he comes around, but look into that later for you. But the point is, Saint Monica had this great patience with a difficult spouse. And so whether you're having trouble with your children or your spouse, or maybe you're the problem in your marriage, I was the problem in my marriage in a big way. You can ask Saint Monica to help you because this is real life. It's not all about, the great spiritual feats that we think of being out in the desert or standing on a pillar or building monasteries. Sometimes it's just being kind to your husband or your wife and not judging them and showing them the love that they need, showing them that you love them unconditionally, even when it hurts. So, this reminds me, I was listening to a friend of mine who's been married about 10 years, and she made a comment something like, um, I don't know why people think marriage is so hard. It's pretty easy. It's like we just talk about things and I tell him what bothers me and then he tries not to do it. And he tells me what bothers him and I try not to do it, right? And I thought, well, God bless you. You're at that. You're still kind of in the honeymoon years. We all start that way. But when you think about it, that's a very contractual way of thinking about marriage. I will do this if you agree to do that, and then we'll get along and everything will be great. But once you're married for 15, 20 years, you realize that sometimes what your spouse wants from you, you're not able to give, or you just don't give. And then what? And that's kind of where the rubber meets the road. Hi, Pike. Welcome. And welcome, Post. See you there. Um, so, yeah, if we're all getting along and we can kind of manage this contractual way of thinking about our marriage, then it works on one level, but you only go so deep. But when you learn to love someone, even though you're hurt, even though you feel unseen, even though you feel like they could give you what you want and they choose not to, which is this is just one perspective from one side, right? It's not the truth of the situation per se. But when you choose to love someone, even though, then you feel such joy and such closeness to them after a while that because you really learn to love them with all their faults. You're going to hurt each other. It wasn't just that my husband was hurting me. I've hurt my husband at times. This is what we do as people, unfortunately, to each other, and we have to learn to love each other even though we hurt each other. That is part of marriage, and it's very humbling. It's easy to think, "Oh, I'm the one who's right in the situation. They hurt me." No, no, no. We hurt each other. And if you want the salvation of your spouse, you have to learn to forgive them. You have to learn to love them, including all the parts that are difficult and that make you feel terrible. Um, so, again, I hope this is making sense to you guys. A little bit on the personal side again today. Yeah, OBG says, I used to believe marriage should be 100%, 100%. Now I'm learning it might be 100% on my part, probably delusional, and 0% on his side. Well, here's the thing that you're touching on, I think, OBG, and that is expectation. I think one of the things I love about my husband is that he has very few expectations, and expectations in marriage are not a good thing. When we require someone to act a certain way, unless we're talking about some very extreme things, which is kind of where Saint Monica was, right? She chose to love her husband even though um, he was treating her very badly, right? That's extreme, and that's like saint level stuff. But I'm kind of talking about, um, we all have these things that we require of our spouses. I want you to treat me this way. I want you to be this way with me, and um, and I think we have to let that go. We have to learn to love our spouse, even though they are not doing what we want them to do. They're not actually there to do what we want them to do. They're there for you to learn to love. They're there for you to give up what you want. That's your opportunity to give up what you want so that you can learn who you truly are, right? And so through this, you learn to love your spouse, but you learn who you are too. Alice says, my husband just loves to annoy me. Kind of wish he would stop it. It would make things easier for me. Uh, and OBG says, to crush my self will. Yeah. And, crushing our self will sounds really romantic and fun, but it's not so fun when you're talking about real relationships. The spiritual life is hard, and learning to love people even though they hurt you is hard. But what is your other option? Is it to give up on your marriage? Is it to be angry unless you get what you want, right? This isn't a rom-com, right? This is real life. So hopefully this is making sense. Um, Knowing your wife means you care. Yes, my husband cares about me quite a bit. He loves to, actually, we love to annoy each other. Um, my favorite way of annoying my husband is not putting the CDs back in the CD cases or leaving his stuff somewhere where it's not meant to be. But he's very forgiving. So, any questions about this? Hopefully, this made sense. Hopefully, you guys are understanding what I'm trying to say. It's yeah, man. Oh, you should know. I kind of think in piles. I don't really have places for things, and my husband's a very neat and clean person, and that's not my personality. You know, but I have a stack of CDs. I know that's terrible. We're gonna go on before I upset Mano, and then I get in trouble for that. Yeah, I think you make a great point, OBG. If you can learn to be grateful in your marriage, even for the struggles, and learn to see that person for the person that you fell in love with, right? It's easy to see them in the moment as the person who's hurting you, who's hurting your feelings or whatever, right? Who's not doing what you want them to do. But if you can learn to love them and remember the reasons why you love them, like it's gonna really help you. And again, if you're going through something like this, it does not mean that something's wrong with you. It just means you're kind of taking your relationship to the next level. And on the other side, things are really beautiful. Things are really peaceful and joyful again. And because you've exposed yourself to each other, you've exposed your hidden sins, your hidden thoughts and inclinations, your hidden desires, and all these things, right? Because you've exposed yourself to one another and then still accepted one another. then you're so much closer afterwards. I thought my um I thought my husband and I were close before we went through this, but afterwards it was a whole different level of being close. Um, Even though I don't put the CDs back, and I lose his keys sometimes, which is also bad. Okay, one other last thing, unless you guys have any questions, I thought I would just throw this one other thing out. If you're, which is going to sound kind of funny, maybe after the CD thing, but um, it's really important in your life to have a program to kind of set your life up in a way. This is especially for moms when we're home, or if you work from home and you don't have a lot of structure from the outside, from an outside job or something. It's important to have a program to set your life up in a way that you get up and you pray and you do first things first, and you take yourself through your day in a way that's thought out, that you don't just wake up, get on your phone, waste an hour, and then think, what am I going to do today? If you look at spiritual people, they have very strict programs with themselves. You know, they they have so much that they're getting done in one day, spiritually speaking, but also just their work, that they have a program. And I say program instead of schedule because it's not about um, you have to do a certain thing at 10 a.m. It's more of I get up and pray because I need to get up and pray. I'm not who I want to be if I don't do that. I'm not spiritually benefiting myself, right? Hey, there's Moldy. Um, so, I've told you about my childhood growing up, how chaotic it was. There was certainly no program at all in my life. So it's been one of the things I still really struggle with. I really have to force myself to stick to a routine and to do the next thing. Sometimes I fall off the boat for quite a while and I have to come back and reestablish those systems, right? But as much as you can, have a program. This will really help your spiritual life, whether that's and when you pray, when you eat, when you read, when you do your work, when you have mental work that you do versus physical work, all of these things you have to have an order to your life, or else you're always going to be pulled by the world into one thing or another, right? Maybe you're pulled into too much work or too much entertainment or too much reading. You can do anything to excess, and so when we have a program, we learn to order our lives correctly and with measure. We're not doing anything too much or too little. Yeah, I saw the video thumbnail, but I've never watched it. So what's the gist of it? Do you want to let us know what the gist of Father Moses' video about not being friends with your wife? I think I have heard him say for men not to share their their concerns about maybe money or their job or whatever with their wives. Yeah, Denise, discipline is key, and I also really struggle with it. Mila says, when my husband laments about life and stressful things, I can't handle it well. I need optimism to take care of my kids, but I could be more supportive. Yeah, that's a hard one. My husband is actually very stoic. Um, okay, so the idea behind the video is the idea to not burden your wife with things out of her control. Um, yeah, I think I might be a little different than most women in this. Um, so I don't know if I should say anything. My husband is very stoic. He's very in charge of, the things that he's in charge of, and I'm very much in charge of the things I'm in charge of in our family. He's not. You guys might not have figured this out, but I'm pretty strong-willed, and I have a lot of thoughts and opinions, and um, the areas that I rule completely, and my husband trusts me to do that, and I trust him to rule the areas that he rules completely. And so we have a lot of trust, camaraderie, and equality between us in that way. So, I can't imagine him not sharing the harder things with me. Um, I don't I don't know that it affects me, but this again, this might be personality. Every relationship is different. It can be difficult to talk about these things in too general of a way because some women are really affected by that. Now, if my husband was less stoic, it might be a totally different situation. When I'm around other men who are maybe more emotional or wishy-washy, I can see that being uncomfortable, but that's kind of not the situation I'm in. Okay. Yeah, I think you're kind of right about this post. We can talk. Post says my opinion is there's no one size fits all, and I'm kind of an odd woman, honestly. I find that I'm pretty different, and my husband's pretty different. We're both kind of Sigma people, out of the box people, and I think it's important to just talk about general ideas. But you're always talking about you know, uh, people who are a certain age, they have a certain background, the two people have a unique relationship, right? How long have they been together? There's so many things that go into talking about relationships and marriage in particular that I would be careful about taking, general advice too specifically. I mean, it sounds like a great video that I think most men, that does seem to be an issue now with a lot of men is that they're too emotional and too effeminate. It's just not my husband's issue at all. So it's hard to speak to that. It does depend on the woman too. Yeah, my husband and I are a pretty good team. We work on things together. Where when one of us is lacking something, the other one is usually pretty stable in that. And um, that comes from being married so long, and we're truly fond of each other, so that helps too. Okay, nice to see you, Moldy. Take care. Well, guys, I don't know that I have any other thing to talk about. It's kind of a weird stream today. Um, if you have any other questions, I'm happy to answer them, but I don't see anything. Everybody getting tired of shrimp out there? Is that the general consensus? You're tired of shrimp and spaghetti? Thanks, Mano. I think I told you I would send you guys some recipes, or at least a list of recipes of things you can eat. So if you're on the new calendar, you're probably pretty tired of fasting by now. Keep at it. Only a few more weeks, guys, but you can mix it up. And cabbage and mushrooms, Mela, are one of my favorite. I'll tell you this recipe, guys, really quick. Slice up an onion or two and a whole head of cabbage, and I saute this with a little oil and dill, fresh if you have it. And then I have a big thing of fresh mushrooms, which at Costco you can also get the dried mushrooms, the gourmet. And so I cook the mushrooms and cabbage low and slow, get it nice and caramelized. Then throw in the mushrooms and both the fresh and a little bit of gourmet. Saute that up for a while. And I actually put this in a pie. I don't know how you eat it, Mela, but I make kind of a Russian style pie. Like if you take pizza dough, cut it in two, roll out the bottom, put it in a pie pan, put a little oil on the bottom so it cooks well, and then dump in the mushrooms and cabbage and onions, and then put the other piece on top and bake that guy up. We love it over rice. I haven't heard of that one, but I think the Greeks do something like that. Anyway, I'll let you guys go if you don't have any other questions for me today. Thanks for being here. If you have any other ideas on topics for live streams, you can let me know. This one came up just because I got a message from somebody that I was really touched by. I'm really touched when anybody reaches out and lets me know how much the streams and the videos and stuff means to them. So it means a lot to me that you find it helpful. So God bless you all. Hang in there, and we'll see you later.